Right, everybody, I think we should start. It is the 12th of March, and I just want to say a huge welcome. We do have quite a lot of new people on the call today, which I will introduce and say hello to them, and they can give you a wave. And I would also just like to say that we do have our chair on the call today, Paul Devlin. You can see him there, just giving you a little bit of a wave. Paul, as our chair, he's been in post now for well over about 14-15 months now, and we've had some really good success over this last year with regards to some of the initiatives and developments that we've put into place, and in a large part of that is under his chairmanship. So it's just to say that that's an important role for this organisation. A lot of you don't often get a chance to meet him or see him, but it's worth kind of coming on to things like Connecting Knots, which is somewhere that you would also get to see him. And he does a lot of horizon scanning at that, and he'll say what's going on in his world. We've also got a few the non-executive directors on today. I can see Alison in the middle of my screen there. She's waving to you, and again a really important role. And I did see also I did also see somebody else. I saw
Steve.
I did see Steve. I thought I saw Steve Banks. Yes. These are important roles in the organisation. They sit on our trust board, and they also chair a lot of our committees. And I've mentioned to you before, their roles are to help and support us, scrutinise what we're doing, ask difficult questions sometimes, make us think. But actually, it's all in the area of being able to develop us and support us to improve and be the best that we could ever be. So a couple of normal things that I do. I highlight a couple of bits out to all of you. Let me just check if there's anybody saying anything there. Right, okay, so just a few bits. I've already introduced Katrina. She's shadowing me today, Katrina Benjamin. She's one of the students, and that's a real pleasure to see her there. And I would encourage any students to start thinking about shadowing any of the executives, particularly come into things like committees, trust board, see how the organisation is run. So we are the custodians and guardians of a lot of information, and actually it's exposing you then to how things are done in this way. I've also like to say hello to Lorraine Hooper. I don't think she's on today, but Lorraine started last week. She is the new Executive Director of Finance, Estates, Facilities, and anything else that we can think to give her. Oh, IT I think is in there as well. Anything else we can think to give her. It's taken a long time in the coming for her starting, but it's absolutely brilliant that she's here. And already she's a really positive person. And a little thing of note, she's an amateur actress, which I think is just amazing. And I did say she probably needed that to work in this organisation. I'd also like to say a huge welcome to Maxine, who I can see on the screen there. Maxine Davis. Give us a wave, Maxine. Maxine is new to the trust. She started 1st of February, and Maxine is a brand new post in the organisation. The 3 clinical divisions are recruiting a equality, diversity and inclusion post lead for the division. Maxine is in post from Adult Mental Health Services. She's got a massive background. It was a pleasure to meet her the other day. So she's got lots and lots of really good experiences that she's going to bring with us. She's worked in London and various places around the country, but she's also worked in local education, local authority, and she's also been a lay member in a CCG for a few years as well, Nottingham City. So like I said, I think that we have done really well, huge asset to the organisation. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that Yolanda is well and truly in post now. Yolanda Martin, who's the lead associate director for comms, fabulous appointment, already making a massive difference. You might well see things on social media a little bit more. She's doing some great work with recruitment. So we're really getting a much more positive vibe out in our adverts and recruitment. And also she's been the lead really to promote the fabulous work that's been done around the staff survey. So that went out yesterday at 9:30, the results from that. And I've been saying to you all along is that we thought we would have a better survey result, and we absolutely have. 10%, well 10.9% of people, more people completed the staff survey than any years previously and on last year. So this is a really good result for us. It's out of 52 trusts. So there are 2 companies that do it, Picker and another one. We tend to go with Picker. And we have improved on both ourselves and also our other trusts that are like us. And this is a massive result for us, because this is about how people feel about working in this organisation, and it also explores things like how they feel about would they recommend it to other people, how they feel about their patients being here, and about care, about all sorts of different things. So it's a very, very positive thing. So you'll have seen the comms that have gone out about that yesterday. I want to also mention 3 other people that are playing a really important part about CQC compliance, CQC inspections, quality first, and we've got 3 brand new people in post. One of them still to start, but she is on the call today. So we've got Mia Morris, and if she's there, she can give us a bit of a wave. I know she's on Louise's computer. So we've got Mia Morris, who's due to start in the organisation. There she is, she's just waving here. There it is, under Louise Dobson's name. And then we've also got John Maguire, who I know is sitting not too far away. And we've also got Louise Dobson as well, who's just in that picture. There's John there at the bottom. There's Louise giving us a wave there. These 3 are really important posts. They support into the divisions around compliance, quality improvement, around our CQC actions that are outstanding, and they will support the divisions to ensure that we've got a really good evidence base for the CQC. Lots of assurance. Remember, we talk about assurance, not reassurance. So a couple of other things just to tell you is that I mentioned last time about the unannounced inspection at Wells Road, which occurred at the end of January over 3 days. It was a little bit, a bit of a wake-up call. It wasn't expected. It was unannounced. And one of the things I've been saying to people is that when anybody does a whistleblowing, or anybody speaks to the CQC, straight to the CQC, about concerns they've got around something called closed cultures, which is what we're here to talk about today, when somebody does that, they don't have to give us any announcement. They don't have to warn us. They can walk straight into a ward. They can walk straight into a building. And on this occasion, that's what exactly happened. They didn't give us any pre-warning. They didn't even ring me an hour before saying, Anne-Maria, we're in the foyer. So they went into Wells Road, and one of the things that they went looking for and did find is closed cultures, privacy and dignity of patients, poor supervision records, and also, did I mention privacy and dignity? Yeah, privacy and dignity. Oh yeah, not dressing poor language. So what they observed is people speaking to patients in a way that actually is not acceptable, but them not being addressed by senior people around. And so those are the things that they found. Anyway, about 10 days later, at the end of February, we received a warning notice. And to get a warning notice it's not great. It means that we're on the naughty step with the CQC. So we've had to make an immediate and urgent response around physical health care for patients. And then we're required to do a full action plan by the 30th of April around closed cultures. So this session today supports and works towards some of that as well. I wanted to also let you know that there has actually been several whistleblowing since the end of January, which is people going straight to the CQC and saying that they're concerned about patients, they're concerned about care that's being delivered, concerned around safer staffing, and also they're talking about privacy and dignity as well. So there are 5 concerns that have been raised in the sort of like not so distant past, and we're now currently looking at those and working out. Some of them are anonymous, so you can't always go back to the individual to say, can I check something out with you? Can I just make sure that we're on the right track? So often they're anonymous to the CQC as well. And so therefore it's about making sure that we put everything in place that we possibly can. One of the things that will help us with that, which we currently don't have, and the CQC are very, very keen to see all trusts have is the ability to learn across. So, for example, a lot of those things, those issues that we have found at Wells Road, it's about them being able to observe the learning across into other areas, other divisions, other clinical environments. And so we're setting up something called a learning forum. We've already developed the terms of reference for that, and we'll be looking for people to attend. But that is very much about not just banging out a newsletter or banging out a brief that says you need to learn from something like a curtain rail that didn't collapse or something that didn't happen, but much more around how you really embed sustainable change based on learning from another event. Okay. Some other good news: we've had no outbreaks since the 21st of February, which is absolutely whoopee-doo. Because for me, I was chairing those at 4 p.m. every single day, and I did start thinking, what are we doing in this trust? And at one point, we didn't drop down below 12. We were running about 12 to 15 every single day since the 9th of September last year. So it's been heavy going, and it's been very, very tiring. But we are now down to 3, and that is down to all the fantastic work you're all doing across the organisation. The only thing I would say is there's still some poor adherence to dress code, and there's still poor adherence to bare below the elbows. And I want to reiterate that to all of you on this call. Please, please, you have influence and you have a voice. Please don't walk past poor standards. I'm making a plea. This is your job. It's your role. It doesn't matter what job you're in. That is your job to do that. Please don't walk past. And we have done a big piece of work around what uniforms should look like and standardising uniforms. As you know, I've been telling you about that. We've come to an end on that project. We have 178 different uniforms in this trust. Just the 178. We've got it down to 24, and what we've done is bring a standardisation of colour into different roles that people play within the organisation. But I do want to say, please, 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 do not allow staff to wear denim, trainers and midriff tops, because it drives me mad. Okay? And also, please don't let people pass the cake around for 24, 48 hours with the same knife. Do not share. Don't share fudge, don't share cake, don't share mince pies, and certainly don't share any Easter eggs as they start coming round either. That is just a real way of spreading the virus still. The virus is still out there, okay? So you've seen it on the news, you've seen that people are still passing away, you've seen that people are still being admitted. Yes, there's a massive drop, but it means that we mustn't take our foot off the pedal. We still must adhere to PPE, social distancing, making sure that we care for our patients in every way that we possibly can. So I wanted to say that the reason that we've put in this session on today, and it is predominantly around closed cultures, freedom to speak up, and civility saves lives. I was really interested in this subject matter, civility saves lives. About 4 years ago, I did a big piece of work on it, and I was absolutely stunned to see the evidence that's behind just being kind and nice to each other, and how the improvements that you can see in patient care, the improvement of patient experience, the improvements of people wanting to be at work, the reduction in sickness. It was amazing. So I'm really happy that we're doing this today. But in a little bit of note of sadness, a little tiny note of sadness, we're doing it today on the back of these unannounced inspections and the whistleblowing, because what we are hearing from staff is they don't feel they're able to say something internally and they've got to go outside. So that is a tint of unhappiness for me that we've got that. But we've got Simbi in post now, who is a fabulous spokesperson around freedom to speak up. Really approachable, knows the role, really good at what we need to be doing as an organisation. And there's lots and lots of people out there passionate about this. We had a very good event today at Rampton Hospital around hate crime and hate incident, joined by I think it was over 50 people I saw, 60 people I saw, having a really good in-depth conversation about the unacceptable hate incidents that we see in this organisation, and that is related and linked to this conversation that we're going to have today as well. So a really important agenda. I'm now going to hand over to Alex, who's going to go through some of her areas that she's been doing work on as well. Over to Alex. Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much, Anne-Maria. Yes, exactly as you said. I mean, I'll hold my hands up. I am absolutely passionate about all of this stuff and the importance of civility and respect. And I'm just going to quickly go through a few slides and just highlight, as you said, and to share some of the importance and the impact that incivility can have. So, when we're looking at civility and respect, and as you've said, there is an organisation, Civility Saves Lives, and a movement really about what that means, and that's where a lot of the infographics that I've pulled together today have come from, I mean, they've said about civility being the only behaviour that makes you appear both warm and competent, and I absolutely love that. I think what we with civility and respect, I think it's we really know when that's not happening, and so when we're looking at what does incivility and disrespect look like, really. It's a lot of either overt or unkind behaviour, some micro behaviours, so blanking people, as you say, raising your voice, and excluding people from conversations, from meetings, and just things that you may see that happen across the organisation that really need to start to be called out and to be highlighted as really not being the behaviours that we're looking for, and the reason for that, as you've said already, Anne-Maria, really is the impact of incivility, and I think it's these that really showcase to me exactly the impact of what happens when people are rude, and those things that people might just brush off as, oh, that's just the way that so and so is, or actually, oh, that they've just had a bad day, or so, whatever. Actually, the impact that has when somebody is being rude, when you're looking at the 80% of recipients, so people who've had that worrying about the rudeness, the reduction in the quality of the work, and as say 25% of people taking it out on service users. The impact also not just on the recipient but on the witnesses that see that poor behaviour and that incivility, and the decrease in performance, the decrease in the willingness to help others, for fear of being shouted at, not calling things out that they may say that should happen as a matter of course, and so it really does impact on everybody. And it really can save lives, and the impact of bullying and harassment and is just huge across across all organisations, that absolutely needs to be stopped. What you also talked about, Anne-Maria, was about closed cultures, and although obviously I'm not the expert on this as you are, but really when you're looking at what the CQC are classing as closed cultures, really looking at the poor culture that can lead to harm, which can include human rights breaches, but it's the impact of all of the behaviours that I've talked about with regards to incivility and disrespect that then can lead to these closed cultures, where staff and management are no longer seeing people using the service as people, that there is just an impact on people being able to speak up for themselves, and that the massive impact that can have, and the risk to harm that can come to people across the service users, but also for, the team members and colleagues across that team. So really what we're looking at then is actually what's happening to address this, And I look at things, because I'm a very simple person, so I look at things in terms of what's happening NHS-wide, what's happening from a trust perspective, team, and then actually from an individual perspective. And this is absolutely something that is within the people plan priority that needs to be addressed. There's across the NHS, there's a civility and respect toolkit that's been sent out, and we're going to be working through. That's been sent out very recently, and that's going to be worked through across the organisation. As you say, there's the CQC are looking at closed cultures and being one of the areas that they're looking at. But there's also a lot of learning opportunities through our NHS people to help address and to change some of the culture and behaviours. Across our organisation, as you are hopefully all aware, respect is absolutely front and centre with regards to our trust values. I've got to stop saying our new trust values, and our trust values. We're really looking at a just and restorative culture across the organisation, looking at policy changes to make sure that actually we're supporting colleagues as much as possible to enable them to feel free to speak up. And I know Simbi's talking later about the work that's happening around freedom to speak up, looking at equality, diversity work, all of these things, and then leading to help to support teams, to support leaders, to be able to show and demonstrate compassionate leadership in everything that we're doing, and really looking at asking teams to look at what those behaviours look like to them, the values, what they look like, to have those discussions, to then be able to call things out, and making sure that we're calling incivility out at all levels. And really just asking teams and individuals not to be permissive of incivility, to really look and be open to feedback. As John Bruin often says, to reflect on what it's like to be on the receiving end of me, really to be, as an individual, to make sure in its absolute simplest terms to just be kind to each other, and just make sure that we're looking out for each other and calling each other, and calling out incivility in all its forms. So I know that's a very whistle-stop tour, but just to leave you with this, which again has come from the Civility Saves Lives, and as you can see, leading through incivility is like breaking wind in a lift. You may feel better, but everyone else feels worse and performs worse. So I just thought I would leave you with that. And we've got a video that's now going to be shown, which comes directly from the organisation Civility Saves Lives.
It was 2 a.m. when the paediatric alert bleep went out. The intensive care registrar and paediatric registrar arrived in the emergency department at the same time as an acutely short of breath 4-year-old girl. The nurses put on the monitoring, the doctors examined the child and spoke with the mother. And after a few moments, they met at the bottom of the bed. They had a discussion about what they thought should happen next. It was passionate, it became heated, voices were raised. And eventually they decided to go with maximum drug therapy, and that they wouldn't do her breathing for her at this moment in time. The intensive care doctor left. He went back to his department, and the paediatric doctor started trying to get intravenous access in the little girl's arm. The nurses asked, "What do you want us to give next?" And he replied, "Aminophylline." They spoke for a moment or two, and then they leaned forward and said, "How do you make it up?" Because they were adult nurses, and there were no paediatric nurses in this department overnight, and you make it up differently for children and adults. He said, "Look, just go and look it up, will you? I'm busy." So they did. They went away, they looked it up, and then they came back maybe 10 minutes later. When they got back, he was still struggling to get this intravenous line in. They said to him, "What rate do you want this to go at?" And he looked up and said, "For God's sake, leave me alone. Can't you see I'm busy?" And they did what we would all do. They took a step back. They took a step back and they waited. And they got the line in, they wrote the script, and then connected the drug through the pump, through the tubing, and into her arm. And over the next half hour, she received 15 to 20 hours worth of aminophylline, a very toxic drug. So what happened next? Well, after a rocky few hours, she did just fine. But there was, of course, an incident form. There was, of course, an investigation. What did that find? It found that the nurses hadn't been competent. It found that the nurses needed retraining. In fact, the nurses shouldn't be allowed to give any drugs till they'd had retraining, and there might have been some communication issues. And I think we missed the point, and I think we missed the chance to be better. Many of us work in teams. Healthcare is no different. We deliver it in complicated, sometimes complex environments with varying outcomes. And for the last 10 years, as well as being an emergency medicine consultant, I've been a safety lead, investigating and trying to understand situations just like this one. And if 10 years ago you had come and asked me, said, "Chris, what do you think the answer is?" I'd have been totally clear with you. I'd have said it's process. If only everybody did what they're meant to do. But there's a problem with that. You can only investigate so many of these when you know that the people involved are knowledgeable, good, diligent professionals before you realize that you must be missing something. And I was missing this. Process is written on paper. But practice happens between individuals and in environments. And I simply wasn't respecting the complexity of the situation. So now, if people come and ask me, what do you think the answer is? I still think process has its place, but something else is more important, and that's people. And I think the evidence bears me out on this. So if we work in teams, what makes teams perform better? Well, in 2015, Riskin and Erez published the first of their landmark papers. In it, what they did was something that hadn't been done before. They took teams who were matched for expertise, and they put them into a patient simulator, and they measured the outcomes. Half of those teams were exposed to mild rudeness. And what did they find? They found, unsurprisingly, that we grade on a curve. We grade from the truly fantastic care that we all want for ourselves and for our loved ones, all the way around to the catastrophic care where patients die unnecessarily. And they found that one factor was responsible for 40 to 60% of that variance, and that's incivility or rudeness. In fact, it looks like for competent teams, the single most important factor determining the outcome of that team is how we treat each other. So incivility. If it's such a big deal, how come we don't know about it? I never got taught about it in medical school, in my membership exams, or my fellowship exams. It's because this is new science. Between 1996 and 2000, on all of the academic papers, there were only 23 about incivility, rudeness. Between 2011 and 2015, there were 1,700. And they pretty much all say the same thing, that this stuff counts. So I should ask, has anybody here seen rudeness at work? maybe to you, maybe to somebody near you, or maybe it's been by you, and it's certainly been by me. How did it feel? Now, my guess is there's a bunch of people, when they're thinking about it, feel angry. But that's not where we start off. In the moment when it happens to us, we feel belittled, ashamed, humiliated. We feel powerless, like children. And then slowly, over minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes days, we start to make sense of it. And then we find ourselves saying, how dare you? How dare you treat me like that? And that's when we find the anger. So today, I'd like to talk about two of the groups that are affected by incivility. Because now, thanks to the wonderful work of people like Christine Porath, we're able to put some numbers onto this. And to do it, I'd like to talk about bandwidth. Because on a good day with a following wind, we're pretty smart people and we can deal with 5 to 7 things. But we have lives, we have cars, bills, houses, family, and it takes up space. So by the time we get to work, we're maybe dealing with 3 or 4 things. What happens when somebody is rude to another person? What happens to the recipient? And I'm talking here about mild to moderate rudeness. I'm not talking about screaming and shouting in your face. That's completely different. On average, when somebody is rude to us in a mild to moderate way, our bandwidth reduces by 61%. And then we cart it with us through the day. We cart this thought of what on earth happened. And then at the end of the day, we get in the car or on the bus and we're sitting there and we feel a wee bit safe and our bandwidth starts to open out again. And then we have that moment where we go, boom, that's what I should have said. That's what I would have said to him. And that's because in that moment, you're back. You're back to being the wonderful, smart, witty self that you are. And in the moment, you weren't. In the moment when it happened, we are quite literally less. When we do it to somebody else, we make them quite literally less. But what about staff onlookers? Well, I'm reminded of an episode in the emergency department. My colleague had tried to refer a patient onto the neurosurgical team. The neurosurgical registrar had said, no. And I know him, and he's a good guy. I didn't know that he was a good guy having a bad day. I said, let me go and chat to him. I'm the big man, eh? So I went along, and I said, got this patient, really like you to see her, neurosurgical problem. He said no. Second tactic. Listen, you know that patient? I'm pretty sure it's a neurosurgical problem. If I'd been smart enough at medical school, I'd have really liked to be a neurosurgeon. And you're here, and you think I'm joking, that really works. And you're here, and he said no. And I'm maybe beginning to get a wee bit angry. So I decided to drop the C-bomb, because that's the way I roll. And I said to him, I need you to see this patient. I am telling you to see this patient because I am the consultant. And he looked at me. There's quite a lot of eye looking going on at this point. And he looked at me and he said, did this. What do I care? I'm going to be a consultant someday myself. And I had nothing except this. I can tell you in here today that the red mist can descend from the Pentland Hills, just outside Edinburgh, all the way into an emergency department in Midlands in under about half a second. And as I stood there, and my voice got louder, deeper, and more Scottish, and I drew myself up to a full 5'7.5", I saw two things happening. The first was that my wonderful, fantastic, amazing colleague, the nurse in charge, did precisely what her title says, and she belted round her desk, and she charged across to us because whatever this crap was, she wasn't going to let it happen in her department. And the second thing was this. I saw the heads starting to go down. First one, pop, then another, pop, then pop, 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 pop. All these heads going down all around, all apart from one guy, is about 3.5 meters in that direction. And he's leaning against the desk and he's watching. And in my corrupted memory, he's opening a packet of crisps and getting a can of Coke out, because this is the most fun he's going to have all day. And I thought those guys were just going back to work, but they're not. The first thing they're doing is avoiding the eye of Sauron, because we know that the way that somebody has just treated the last person is likely to be the way that they treat the next person. And something else is happening as well, because they actually have their bandwidth impacted too. And on average, they are 20% reduced in their performance. But there's more. Because if they get up and they walk around the corner and somebody asks them for help, they're then 50% less likely to help that person. This stuff is simply contagious. So is change possible? This is 1959. Western General Hospital in Edinburgh, the NHS is 11 years old, and this is my mum. And next to my mum, Charlotte and Julie, they were forged as junior nurses in the NHS. They still meet and they still have coffee together. And on the ward, twice a day, one of my mum's jobs is to clean the ashtrays. Because there's an ashtray on every single bedside locker. Patients are being encouraged to go for a cigarette. It's good for the nerves. In fact, if you don't smoke, maybe you'd like to think about taking it up. And then we learned the terrible toll that tobacco takes on health. What did we do? We stopped smoking. We stopped advising people to smoke, and we stopped supporting it. So now it's 2019. We're beginning to understand the impact that behaviour has on team performance. And that's great. What a wonderful opportunity. Because by choosing to behave in ways that value and respect the people around us, we help individuals and teams to perform at their peak. In my world, civility can literally save lives. But for all of us who work in teams, who work with people, civility can be the difference between okay and great, no matter what we do. Thank you very much.
Wow. I think I've seen that a number of times, and it just has impact all the time. I see it. So I'd like to hand over to Meagan McNaney, who's a nurse consultant who's got some questions for everybody. Thank you.
Hi, yes, so I've got some questions for Anne-Maria and Simbi today. So welcome, and thank you both for joining me and agreeing to be in the hot seat, so to speak. So I'm sure you agree, a really powerful and thought-provoking video. So firstly, I'd just like to hear your thoughts on what we just heard. If I can come to you first, Anne-Maria.
Yeah, thanks, Meagan. I love the fact that you've got a background that says questions. That's just amazing. Well, anyway, I've seen that video before. It was a while back. I think it must have been when it first came out, and I'm still impacted by it. I think it's so powerful. I heard a very similar story when we started doing human factors, and we started looking at human error and looking at how we look at, you know, how things are, how we'd look at the start to the end of how things could have gone wrong rather than blaming an individual. And I thought that this is very, very in a similar vein, and that ended in a terrible disaster, because it was a young lady who actually died because people were so rude in the sort of like emergency room, and people didn't dare speak to the anaesthetist because he was so rude. But actually, I think that for me, it says such a lot, and I think that it's almost like I want to say to everybody, watch this, it's really important, you all need to know it, you all need to know that being kind can have such a massive difference. So I think the first thing that just leaps out at me is everybody should know it, and everybody should do it and be aware of it, and please. So that's how it makes me feel.
Absolutely, a very similar reaction the first time I watched. As I say, that was the second time for me, and I thought for 15 minutes the messages it gets across and the education about the subject, it's fantastic. Simbi, what were your thoughts on viewing the video?
Right, thank you. Oh, have I got my volume on? Yes, yes, I have. So yes, I had not watched that video before. I just watched it not very long ago, this afternoon, and to be honest, it made me feel I could relate to a lot of what he was saying. I felt, you know, especially at the very beginning, I actually was starting to feel quite sad, because it had reminded me of a time when I was on the receiving end of incivility. So yeah, it's great, and I think, as Anne-Marie said, I think everyone should watch it. But I just thought I also wanted to just throw on, just mention that, you know, the meaning of civility and incivility, because I think we started when we were talking about it, and maybe we're just assuming that everyone perhaps is picking up or inferring the meaning of it from what's been said. But I always don't want to make assumptions. So I will attempt to explain what civility is, especially from what I've seen in the video. So civility is formal politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech. It is the opposite, obviously, of incivility, where we have rudeness that's been said in there, and all the other stuff such as microaggressions, etc. So I think the video raises our awareness on the impact of our behavior on others. It highlights about bullying, about harassment, and it promotes cultures of civility and respect, which is what we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Simbi. That was really well put, and thank you for sharing your personal reflections. I think you raised a really good point there, that there might be something for us to think about, raising awareness of civility and incivility and those actual meanings. Anne-Marie, what effects do you think witnessing incivility might have on patients?
Yeah, good point. I have a thing about what we walk past and role models. So I think that if you witness incivility from a junior perspective, I worry that people would think that that's okay and that that's all right to do. So I think that, I suppose what I want to say is that it's not all right, and the impact on patients is that they feel that they can't say something, or there's no point in speaking up, or and it does affect, you know, their treatment. It affects their recovery. It affects everything that they do, and we know that people sort of respond so much better to positive, you know, what's going around them that's positive, and actually they don't respond well to things that are really negative, and those negative things can be language, behaviour, attitude, how people are towards them, and those microaggressions are really impactful without people realising how much they impact. So I think for me, people witnessing it comes in is a double whammy thing almost. Junior staff witnessing, thinking it's okay. People walking past it when they've observed it. Poor language or anything to patients affects the patients in so many ways that we can't describe almost. So yeah, I think it's just huge in every single way, in every just so many different ways.
And would you say it was fair to say that that impact on staff and patients can lead to an overall, a general lack of confidence within the services we're providing?
Yeah, and also, can you imagine from a carer's perspective as well, if patients, carers, families, loved ones, children are observing us treating their family members like that, then they lose confidence in us as well. So there's a loss of confidence in everybody. So the patients lose confidence, all of the carers and loved ones and families back home, they lose confidence in us as well. And the reputation of the organisation goes down the drain really almost. So, and who would want to work in an organisation that that's where it's acceptable or where, you know, it's okay to do that? So the impact is huge on every aspect of our working lives. And I did a big piece of work recently whereby people leave a team. They don't leave a trust, they leave a team, because it's the team that makes them feel that they've got something to belong to. And if people are nice to each other in the team, that goes a long way.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And with that in mind, what can we do to raise awareness of the issue of civility in the trust and the potential impacts that you've described?
Yeah, so I feel that, like I said, we've got a really good comms capacity now. They've got a really good understanding of what we need to be pushing out there to make sure that staff are aware. I think it's about putting this agenda onto all teams, meetings, even small team meetings to big team meetings to committees. I think it needs to go from the very bottom all the way to the top, and from the top all the way down to the bottom. I think we all need to live it. I think we need to witness it. We need to role model it. And often, you know, that culture and the way that we do things starts at the top, but actually we're 9,500 staff. We've got a lot of places to get into with this. So I think that it's about everybody's responsibility to talk about it and to call it out. Back to Simbi, what says, call it out. If you see it, don't accept it.
Excellent, thank you. And Simbi, what advice would you give to people who feel that incivility is something that they should expect and accept?
My advice is, do not accept incivility. It's not something that you have to put up with. I know that sometimes people think that they have to normalize bad behavior or to accommodate, to try and change their behavior in order to accommodate that the way they are being treated. If you are being treated with disrespect, if you are facing microaggressions, bullying, harassment, you should speak up. You should speak up. And your first point of protocol, or where you can speak up first, maybe the first place is your line manager. And if you feel that you can't speak up to your line manager, you can speak to the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. That's my role. And also we've got lots of other routes within the trust that you can speak up via, and I will be mentioning some of these later on. But I just want to send the message to say, please do not put up with incivility. Is unacceptable. Our trust value, it's against our trust values, because we have trust, honesty, respect and teamwork. And as that video showed clearly, for us to work as a team, we need to be respecting each other. We need to be mindful of our actions. I actually like one saying which says, respect other people's feelings. Even if it doesn't mean anything to you, it might mean something to them. Just respect other people's feelings. So it's very important. And should you feel that your feelings are not being respected, don't suffer in silence. Speak up. Thank you.
Meagan, can I just add something actually? Something on the back of what Simbi's just said. I think that storytelling is really, really good in this organisation, and I think storytelling goes a long way to getting a point across. So, you know, like that doctor there, that consultant we've just saw, those stories were really, really impactful. It kind of like brought the story better to you. And I think it's not about just going out to people and saying, you know, be nicer. It's about be nicer because, and actually giving a little bit more of a kind of, a bit more of a story behind it, and what you may well have received, and the impact you might have had, or an experience you might have had. And then the other thing I just thought would be worth saying as well is I thought the slides that Alex showed us were really, really good. I've seen them before, but there's one, I love infographics. I think infographics are brilliant. But the one where it shows like the 20% increase in, you know, productivity, 50% decrease in patient experience. I think having something like that maybe on our computers and little posters and a little bit more out there really, so on the number front of what it does. So yeah, those are the bits I wanted to add to that.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I was going to come back to you. Thank you both. And I just want to say to Simbi as well, I love how I get a real sense of your passion every time you speak. It's really positive and fantastic. So I did have just one last question to end, and I was just thinking about the pressures people have experienced at the minute, the different pressures, and wanted to end by asking, what do you both do to unwind and relax and to look after yourself at the end of a tough day?
We get these really weird questions on question and answer to the execs as well, and Paul said careful, yeah, no. Simbi, you go first.
For me it's easy.
I'm going to say.
I just iron clothes. I'll take a big ironing basket and start ironing clothes. Well, the other thing that I do is to take walks. I walk a lot. I've got a lake not far from me, and I walk around the lake. When I'm feeling really, really tired or something is on my mind, I can even go around twice or 3 times, just going around and listening to some music, and I find that quite helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
So I did join boot camp. And I used to go 3 mornings a week at 6:30 to boot camp, and I absolutely loved it. I used to play a lot of badminton, and of course I'm older now, so I can't play badminton, but I used to go to boot camp and I loved it. But all with lockdown, I've not been able to do that, so I've taken to painting. And you're going to laugh because my husband says don't stand still because you'll paint. Yeah. So last weekend I painted the whole fence, and I've got a very, very, very long fence and a big wooden thing. So I've painted all of that, and this weekend I've already bought the grey paint because I'm going to paint a big brick wall. So I'm painting the big brick wall this weekend. So I tend to paint. I do a lot of painting. I don't know what it is. I really enjoy it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, guys. So I'd like to hand back to Simbi, actually, who's going to give us a brief overview of the role of the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian and also the champions.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Freedom to Speak Up. Just very briefly, I will just want to give you a brief sorry, I can't. I think I'm tired. It's Friday, so a brief background about Freedom to Speak Up. Some of you might know that Freedom to Speak Up started as a result of a public inquiry into poor standards of care at Mid Staffordshire Foundation, NHS Foundation. This was chaired by Sir Robert Francis in 2015, and there were poor standards of care. Staff were being disrespected. There was bullying of staff, and staff who tried to speak up were being victimized, and they suffered detriment as a result of speaking up, and poor standards of care on patients, etc. So it exposed all those poor standards, and then the inquiry, the report came up with 20 principles, which I'm not going to talk about, but I'll talk about 2, which are very, very important in terms of us understanding what speaking up is about. So 2 of those principles were about creating a culture of openness. So this is where there's freedom of staff to speak out, and this relies on staff being able to work in a culture which is free from bullying, where they are thanked for raising concerns and where they are confident that the concerns that they raised will be fairly investigated. And the second principle was about visible leadership. This is where everyone at all levels of the organization should be able to demonstrate how they support others to speak up freely and how to and be accountable for the way that they raise and respond to concerns. So freedom to speak up generally is about creating that open culture, a culture of openness where everyone can feel that they can speak up about anything. It is about speaking up about anything that gets in the way of providing good care. We can speak up when we feel that improvements can be made, even when things are going well, but we feel that improvements can be made. We should be able to speak up and be listened to and be thanked for speaking up. It's also about us as a trust learning from what people are speaking about. So with a healthy speaking up culture as an organization, patients are safe and well cared for, errors are prevented, and we learn from each other, and feedback and communication is clear and inclusive, and we all feel valued and respected, and we feel that we play an equal part. We are healthier, we are happier, and we are more productive, just as we have, just been saying about civility. So maybe you might want to say, how do I speak up? Usually, your line manager, as I've said earlier, will be your first point of contact. However, if you feel that you are not comfortable to speak, you don't feel comfortable speaking to your line manager, then you can use other formal routes. You can speak to the guardian, you can also even speak to your service manager. Our chief executive director operates an open speak up culture. If you feel that you want to go to John directly, you are more than welcome to do so. But however, as I've told you, you can start with your team leader, your line manager, and if you don't feel comfortable, there's another above that. Or if you want to speak to your union, because, as Anne-Marie said at the beginning, we've had quite a number of CQC whistleblowing cases or people speaking out externally. Maybe that should be your very, very last resort. We want everyone to feel comfortable and confident that they can speak up using available routes. So my role as guardian is to support you in raising concerns. I offer independent and confidential service as per recommendations of the Sir Francis Freedom to Speak Up review. So you can come to me in confidence. If you want to speak up but you don't want your name being attached to what you have said, it's fine. I can still report back to you because I know who you are. You can even speak up to me as well anonymously if that's what you prefer. But all the same, we're saying speak up. Don't suffer in silence. If anything is going in the way of you providing good care, speak up. So my role, I also work alongside the National Guardian's Office. When people are speaking up, I identify the themes that people are speaking up about. And I will be honest with you, most of the themes that are coming up are to do again with bullying, harassment, and incivility that we've just been covering. Our graph is quite high on that, and sometimes it's to do with policies and procedures not being followed properly. So this is not only our trust, it's other trust as well. It's quite common, but it's not acceptable. So I do work alongside, I do report the key themes to the board and obviously to yourselves as well, because it's important for you to know what we are speaking up about. I try and raise awareness, please don't make these meetings on Friday afternoons. I can see that I'm not I'm not in my best. But anyway, I raise awareness about speaking up. Please feel free to invite me to your team's meetings. Sometimes where there is great need, I can even attend your ward meetings as well, because I know that sometimes it's difficult for staff to find time to be released to attend these big meetings. If it helps for me to attend your small ward meetings, I'm quite happy to look on my calendar and be available for you if you need me. I try and be as visible as possible so that everyone within the trust knows what Freedom Speak Up is about, and that people would be aware how to speak up. So I work with Freedom to Speak Up champions. We're still recruiting champions, and if anyone is listening who would like to become a champion, please come forward. Due to the size and geographical spread of our trust, Freedom to Speak Up champions play a pivotal role in raising the Freedom to Speak Up agenda. As a champion, you'll be there to offer support and guidance to those wishing to raise concerns. You can signpost them to the Guardian. You can talk about speaking up in your team meetings, or offer some drop-in sessions where people can just come around and talk. We are in unprecedented times when people are really tired, and a tired person is an angry person. So sometimes these microaggressions are happening as a result of this climate. So it's nice to have that time to speak up. So champions play a very important role. So again, if anyone wants to be a champion, you don't need to have any particular role. A champion can, regardless of your band, you can become a champion. I'm very excited that on our champion register we've got admin staff, we've got staff that we've got care assistants, we've got managers as well. So I've got a wide range of skills, non-clinical and clinical staff. Please come forward and support this very, very good cause for all of us as a trust. It is a very important role. I think I'll probably want to end there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. So you've got rooms to go to just till about 20 past. Come back into the main room at 20 past, but I'm leading the conversation in Breakout Room 1, which is General Health, and Linda will be leading the conversation in the Mental Health Focus, Breakout Room 2. So if you go and join those rooms, and then see you back here 20 past 3. It's just a real chat between us about what you've just heard, what you've just seen, how it made you feel, really, whether or not the video itself had any impact. I'd be quite interested to see if there's anything you're going to take away from this and do differently after this session. We thought it was really important. I'm a little bit sad that we have had so many people feel that they've got to go outside the organisation to say to the CQC that this is how it makes me feel. I'm really sad about care that I'm seeing, staffing that I'm seeing, privacy and dignity. The examples of the privacy and dignity were really interesting, because they said that what they observed was people not announcing themselves and going straight into somebody's room. And I thought that was really kind of like, in this day and age, I thought we'd got better at being a little bit more, like doing that. So I can imagine that 20, 30 years ago we used to do that quite a lot, but certainly now I would have thought that we were much better at announcing ourselves and hello, and are you all right if I come into the room and whatever else, this is my name is. The big campaign that we had with Kate Granger, my name is, the consultant who died. And she had such an important message to give to the country around announcing ourselves and saying who we are. So so if anybody wants to sort of like join me in how you feel about this. So firstly, any feedback from the presentations of the videos? Claire, thank you. Otherwise I'll be rambling on my own, Claire.
I know, I thought I may as well jump in. You might have known I would have. I think, personally, my emotions have just gone all over the place in the last hour. The video, the TED talk, I could have just cried because I actually thought the poor child was going to die. I was just waiting for the devastating news to come, and then all of the repercussions on the nurses who did what they'd been told to do. So I thought that was really insightful. I too feel really, really sad that as a caring, compassionate, we work in the NHS, for goodness sake. I still cannot believe that we're still getting feedback where people just aren't even being civil to each other, let alone kind. I mean, civil's on the very basic level, isn't it? And then we up it to kindness and compassionateness. And I've struggled with it, if I'm honest, Anne-Maria, because it should be part of the very bones of who we are. And I struggle with the fact that it's still there and it's still part of the culture, and it's even more difficult, I think, in this last year because we haven't been visible and we don't have the same eyes and ears, and people have struggled for all sorts of different reasons personally, haven't they? So I'm sure that there've been some behaviours going on that probably may not have done previously because people are really struggling emotionally, aren't they, on a personal level, and I guess some people's resilience isn't quite as good as it has been. So yeah, for me, just a bit all over the place. It just makes me feel a bit sad, I think, overall. Love all the civility stuff though. The people that are on this call that know me absolutely love it's right up my street, and just let's bring it on, for goodness sake. Just be kind to each other. It's just basic stuff.
I agree. And you know what? It's really interesting you should say that. Actually, I thought of a little story, actually. My daughter has the worst road rage you've ever seen. And, you know, like, honestly, it's dreadful. She's nearly 30 this year, but she's had it since she started driving at 18. And she rants and raves at, you know, other people on the road. Well, even though those other people can't hear her, I still feel that she's being rude, you know what I mean? So they can't hear her. They can't hear a word she's saying. But I'm just mortified. And I'm never really, I have no road rage whatsoever. I never, ever, ever have it. And it doesn't matter how stupid somebody else has been on the road. I just think, oh, bless them. You don't know what you don't know whether their mother has just died. You don't know whether they're late for picking up the kids. You just don't know what other people's lives are like. So I don't know. I find it really, I do, even though I'm a very strong person and I'm quite outspoken, and you've all got to know me now over this last year. You know, I'm loud and I use my hands and everything like that. But even if somebody's rude to me, I do shrink like a violet. I'm a bit like, oh, don't tell me off, or don't shout at me, or don't say something. So even I get it, and I think, oh no, don't do that. That's just so horrible. How does anybody else feel? I can see a few of you nodding at me. The only thing I did think, I thought it was sad that not everybody would. I think the whole organisation should watch that video. That's the only thing I did think. I think everybody should watch it. Well, it's
going out on the recording, so...
well done, that's Jenny. Yeah. Heather, what have you got to... Heather?
The thing for me was, for watching it, and I actually, I think I don't know whether it went out on John Bruin's email or something, but I'd seen the uncivility slides and read through them the previous day. But for me, the main impact is, I think we all know how it makes us feel, you know, when someone is uncivil to us, but it's that knock-on, I think, you know, throughout the day, and the effect that it has on everybody else around you as well. I think that's the, and then ultimately onto patient care as well. I think that's the sort of most enlightening bit for me, if you like, and that's why I feel very enthusiastic about, you know, sharing it with my team members, because although I think, you know, I've got an excellent team who's always thinking about each other and wellness and being civil to each other, I just think it's still worthwhile passing it on and that reinforcement as well. So
yeah, I agree, Heather, I agree with that. Thank you for that. Dawn?
When I was watching the video, it took me way, way back when I was a newly qualified staff nurse. And I think a lot of us have been at the receiving end of the, you know, that doctor or matron or whoever. And you just think, oh God, I just don't. And that, you know, and I reflect back and it is sad. there are times when maybe I should have said something and I didn't because I just didn't feel confident enough. But it also shaped who I am now. And I think I'm a real... I really do think emotional intelligence is one of the stronger points. So I'm a bit like Claire, really. It's almost like, really? Is this really going on? Because it's just not what I would identify my teams or the services we run. So it's sad, but equally, I think it's really a positive stance from the trust, to be honest, about what's going on and doing something about it. So, yeah, that was a really emotive video for me.
I don't know how everybody else feels, though. I see some real incivility on our close Facebook page. Have you seen sometimes how rude people are to each other on that? I read it and I think, I can't believe you've said that. I mean, it's really quite in your face and rude. I mean, there was one person who came back to me and said, you're just being a politician in your responses. I wanted to die. I spent 3 days really harrowing over the fact that she called me a politician. I was thinking, oh my God, that's the last thing I ever felt like. Jenny?
Yeah, I would just, reflect and reiterate what Claire spoke about resilience. And I think often we've got the most. Well, for me personally, tell my story. For me personally, when I'm the most stressed, the most up against the wall, I'm the most, got so many plates that I'm juggling and they've all got priorities and they all need to be done now and you've got so many people chasing you. That, and I'm tired and I've got family stuff and all the other stuff going on, that is when I'm more likely to be uncivil. And sometimes, and I'm sure we're all like it, we hear things coming out that aren't intended to sound that way, or we can say things without sort of thinking it, and then think afterwards, that I never intended it to be like that. And sometimes email is the worst one for that, because you can just dash something off and then it's gone. And I do try not to, but I think absolutely resilience is a big part of that. So whatever we can do sort of organisationally to help build both resilience and also emotional intelligence, as Dawn said as well, that I think those go hand in hand. And the sort of the flip side of civility as well.
I think Dawn raises a good point there, though, because I think you have to raise other things in order to get civility. So you have to raise people's emotional intelligence, resilience, in order then to get the civility. Because if you don't have those things, the knock-on effect is you're incivil. Katrina?
Well, yeah, just like everyone else was saying, really, it just takes you back to those times when you're a student mainly or newly qualified and people are looking down on you a little bit and being uncivil to you. It's watching that, it just reminds you of all those times that happened to you. But I was thinking about, it was one of my biggest regrets as well, when I was a band 5 and we had a newly qualified nurse, and one of the other nurses, she came and told me, she wasn't very nice to me. She'd gone to the manager and they'd said, dismissed it. Oh, that's not usually like her. Like what they're saying on the video, it's not usually like that person. And my biggest regret was not sort of intervening and saying, do you want me to talk to them for you? So I guess my question is, like, how do you challenge that? Because personally, it makes me angry as well. So how do you challenge that without being uncivil yourself? In a way, you have to be really careful, don't you? To say, not in so many words, I think you're out of order there, without it coming across, Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how do others feel that I think it can be done. I think it can be done in a way that gets your point across without being rude. But there's an art, I think, Katrina. I think there's an art in that, because sometimes it's like you appear rude back, isn't it? Because it's a hard thing to do. So I think there is an art in it. Claire?
I've got 3 things now. So just to what Katrina said, I think there's a place for team behaviours and values, to set them as a team. Because once you've established and agreed as a team, actually what will be tolerated, you've all got the given right to call it out at any point in time. And there is a kind of way of doing it, but we're all human, aren't we, at the end of the day? And if you can call it out through kindness, I can't think that at any point you can do it wrong. And then in terms of what Jenny was saying, again, we are all human. So if we do get a bit raggy and we do respond in an email maybe the way we shouldn't, or we've said something to somebody in the way we shouldn't, the kindest thing to do is just apologise, isn't it? And just say, oh, God, I'm so sorry. I really shouldn't have said that. It was out of turn. I didn't mean actually what I said, all that stuff. And then thirdly, the funny little story that I've got was a student nurse. I think I might have been in my first year, and it might have even been on my first ward. And me and my friend were doing the making beds while the consultant ward round was going in the opposite bay. Well, we didn't know, did we, that it's like, oh my gosh, everyone has to be really quiet. So we were singing at the top of our voices, getting the bay all joyous and happy, and the patients were loving it. We're having a right old sing-song until the sister came banging around the corner and really tore strips off us. It was awful. Never lived it down for about a year. But brilliant. Patients were happy.
I love that, Claire. I love that. Sarah?
It's about actually feeding back how something made you feel, isn't it? I mean, you can't, that's as honest as you can be about that. You can't control how someone behaves. You can't control what happened in the heat of the moment. But if somebody is disrespectful or uncivil, either at the time or later, if you can, to reflect on it and feed back about how it made you feel. I mean, I really love John's stuff on being on the receiving end of you, or being on the receiving end of me. And I think once you talk about feelings, it sometimes does make things easier to talk about and to reflect on. But it's not easy to do. You know, and it's not easy to sort out relationships between individual people. And I think the best way of doing it is for those two individuals to sort it out with support. But you know, it's not easy, but it's a really good thing to raise, and there's some really powerful messages coming out of today.
Thank you, Sarah. That's really good. And Alex, normally Alex hands over to me and says, Anne-Maria, handing over to you. So this is so different. So I'm now saying, Alex, over to you. What would you like to say?
I will not be asking you any awkward questions, either, Anne-Maria. But I was just, Claire took the words right out of my mouth, as she probably knows that she would. With regards to absolutely about the teamwork and doing that piece, and just a bit of a plug with regards to the values and the behaviours in practice, just about having that conversation as a team about what behaviours are acceptable, and that actually if we've got the values as an organisation, it's not necessarily that we want everybody to behave in the same way, because things will vary from team to team, but actually it's making sure that things are acceptable within your team, and it's absolutely safe, and you know, people feel psychologically safe to call things out, because that's where, you know, and then hopefully you won't get to the issues where it ends up where people are having to intervene. But as you say, unfortunately things, you know, don't always happen like that, but it's just building those relationships.
Thanks, Alex. So, sorry, we've got to call it to an end now. I could have carried on with this, actually, a very nice bunch. So let's move back into the main room and just give a bit of feedback. Thank you.
We're not going to do any introductions, but as people speak, they can just let us know their name and where they work. I'm Linda Chibuzor. I'm the Deputy Director of Nursing for the Trust. So during this session, what we are going to do is to just look at three things, really, to get your views and your feedback on the presentations. We'll then discuss around what affects, so how has incivility affected you, your feelings around this, whether you have experienced it or even witnessed what has happened to patients. And then the last part of this is a question that we're posing to everyone. Do you think that this is a problem in our trust? And if we can work through that, I always feel that it's not a problem, but it's an opportunity to change things. So if we can work through quite quickly, then we'll list a few solutions around. If we think it's a problem, then a couple of solutions. If we don't think it's a problem, then we don't need solutions. So over to you, colleagues, just to get your views and feedback on the presentations that we've had this afternoon. Anyone?
Linda, I think you should pick on the people that have got the cameras off.
They're hidden.
I think for me, I know we sort of helped to organise the today, and thanks, Meagan, that was fantastic, your involvement there. But I was so shocked when I looked at all of the data to see the actual impact on not only just as individuals and what it did to you and your confidence, but the impact it had on your ability to undertake your role effectively. And also then just the impact of people who observe in civility. It was shocking to me. I had no idea really that that the impact was so massive, and it makes you think about patients who, often, particularly in ward areas, might be sitting and they observe and they can see what happens around them and potentially see conflict or problems that happen, and how that must make them feel. It really is. It was quite a surprise to me. I had no idea.
Thank you very much for that, Sharon. Other colleagues?
Yeah, I echo that as well, Sharon. And the other thing I think what Anne-Marie was saying is about people don't leave the trust, they leave teams. And I thought, God, I've never thought of it kind of that way either, which was kind of a good, good hit in the face, really. So it makes you think about kind of your own service, really, and moving forward.
Sure, everyone will have some thoughts, views on this. I don't want to take too much time, so yeah, might just go around asking everyone. Maxine?
Everyone. Yes, it was a good presentation that picked up on rudeness. I guess we would all think as adults that we know what rudeness is about, but apparently not. So yeah, it's useful to capture it and present it in a way that people can see it and see its see the impact that it has.
Thank you for that. Martina?
I really enjoyed the presentations, and I've just been thinking about the risks, and for me, listening to that today, the biggest risk of leading through incivility is when we're in stressful environments. And I think healthcare is a very stressful environment, and when I've witnessed it, it often comes from people having to be very responsive and dealing with crisis situations. So I just think it's important to, when we're thinking about it, leading through that and what we're going to do about it, is thinking about our particular risk areas and what challenges that we do experience. And our tolerance, I think, does change, and our ability to be kind to each other, also to be kind to ourselves when we're working in really high, stressful, demanding environments such as healthcare.
Yeah. That's a very valid point, Martina. I think we see that in quite a lot of areas where people, once you're dealing with a pressure, a high pressure situation, then you do get that. I remember it as well, being on the ward, someone actually shouting, "Get the red bag, get the emergency bag," and it's those sort of things. So that's a very useful point for you to raise. Other colleagues, Darren?
I think just while other people are thinking, something I was thinking about is, can you hear me? Yeah, so Sharon's nodding. Yeah, I just wanted to reflect on the process of today rather than so much the content which people have talked about. I think it's so powerful, the use of videos. I don't know, Maria already commented on that, but Sharon's idea of doing the Q&A, which I was lucky to be involved in, but I just think it's a really different way of addressing issues than, you know, a standard PowerPoint presentation. So I think going forward, when you have got an hour and a half, it's been a really good use of that time, having the mixture of the videos, the information, and yeah, thought that was good.
Thanks for that, Megan. That's really helpful. I'm just trying to also give colleagues who've got cameras off. Amanda?
I suppose I've just been listening to and thinking about, I mean, there have been different comments talking about we don't know what's going on in different people's lives and we don't know what's going on in the work lives and things like that and why they're behaving the way they are. But I suppose the thing that got me was actually how you think about how many people it impacts when somebody is in that place and communicating in that way, and how long the reverberations continue afterwards to affect so many different people, and about sort of thinking of my own responsibility when I witness things like that and how I should be thinking of managing it and preventing those reverberations. I suppose that's been the main message to me.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Linda, I don't know if it came over in the presentation, but just picking up from some of the things that have been said. Obviously, there are triggers, you know, to things like rudeness, which could be people's lives, you know, what's happening on the wards and things like that. And we might not always be able to identify those triggers, especially what's happening in people's lives. I just think it might be useful to separate the triggers from what it is within the culture that sustains the behaviour, if you see what I mean. So I don't think the triggers should be used to explain away the behaviour, kind of thing. I still think there's obviously there are triggers, and we all know individually there are times when we're more fraught than others, and we each can be rude and whatever. But I think within an organisation, the focus has to be a bit more on the culture that sustains that behaviour, you know.
Well, I think you're right. It goes again to what we were discussing earlier around us having to accept things. So I remember a time when I was qualified and someone was really rude to a lot of us and said hurtful comments, and the response was that, you know, her mom is in the hospice. So we all had to accept that. And actually, I was thinking, oh gosh, her mom is in the hospice, so it's going to get worse if her mom dies. You know, so I had to live with that. Take it away with me, and I was quite relieved I was able to leave before her mom died, because I just felt I had to get out. So I can absolutely understand what you're saying, that yes, people will have triggers, but they should have other ways to then be able to communicate those stressors without them playing out in behaviors of incivility. So if we can move on to the next part and actually give other colleagues who've not given their feedback, views on the effect that incivility has. And this is where people can then share if there's experiences that they have that they might want to share, or even what they've witnessed around how that behavior has impacted on patients and other colleagues. And it also sometimes impacts on visitors who come into our services. Simbi?
Thank you. I was once on the receiving end of incivility, and this was done by someone whom I never expected that they would treat me that way. It was actually a medical doctor, a GP. I had consulted a GP, it was some years and years ago. So The only thing I did was to ask. I wasn't clear about what he had said because he also had an accent. I have an accent, and he had an accent as well. So I suppose maybe I didn't quite hear what he had said on what he had instructed me around my consultation. And so he raised his voice and said, "I said this. Do you know, I felt like, why is he speaking to me like that? And I couldn't answer him back. I just looked at him. I just could not believe that he had raised his voice on me. I looked at him and I waited for him to finish what he was saying. And then I just walked out. I was crying all the way from the surgery to when I got home. And that time I remember I was going through other things as well that were already, I already had a lot on. And by him shouting like at me like that, I felt very humiliated, and I felt belittled. I just thought that maybe because of the color of my skin, did he think that I don't understand English? Did he feel he had to raise his voice like that? And, I just, it troubled me. Following day, I phoned the surgery and I said I wanted to speak to the practice manager. And I did explain that, what had happened and how I was feeling. And they said they would look into it. Well, I think actually at first it was his wife who took the phone, who was also a doctor there. The wife took the phone and was saying, and I had to explain to his wife that I didn't like the way Dr. so-and-so spoke to me. He said, "Oh, sometimes if he's having bad days, this," and she tried to sound as if he can be like that. I said, "It's okay for him to do that to you, but not to me as a patient. I really need to speak to the nursing manager." So anyway, they did say to me that they had spoken to him. If it was today, I think I would have taken it further than that. But I think it just ended with a letter of apology from the practice manager, etc. But it really made me lose confidence in, in that practice, in that GP practice, and I wanted to change, not to go there again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Simbi. Martina?
For me, I think it creates a lot of anxiety amongst teams when they have got these individuals. As I've just put in the chat, I think 18 years I've worked at Rampton, and the culture has changed massively. But you used to always hear, "Oh, it even used to be, he's known as Grumpy so and so. He's always rude. Everybody knows that he comes on the ward and swears."
Yeah.
And the impact it has on the patient team and the staff team, that it's anxious, they lose confidence in themselves, they don't want to approach people for help because they feel like they're going to get shot down, and I think, being honest, there's still pockets of that in an institution like Rampton, and when we chat with our ward managers about incidents and that crisis management, different personality styles come into play, and I think it's really important that we have the confidence to be going back to those people and saying, "This is not acceptable," how you're speaking to people, and that takes a lot of courage as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Martina. Sharon?
I just want to say, I absolutely agree, Martina, and I think we've all had those experiences that they are around, which sort of comes on to, I suppose, what you mentioned in terms of the other things that you wanted to explore here. But I remember when I first joined the Trust, I just wanted to say this, that there were people who I was told about as part of my induction, I suppose, to avoid or to be careful of, or you'll find that they aren't very friendly, and you'll find that they are quite rude, or you'll find that they are very direct. And I just found it just a very surprising sort of experience as part of my induction, really, that these people were known, and people tiptoed around them, and really not very much was ever done about that. It was quite incredible, really.
Okay. So if I ask you, Simbi, to come in, and then I'll just summarize quickly for colleagues, because we'll need to go into the we'll need to go back into the main group.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the other one I just wanted to mention is that it de-skills people. People feel that they can't get involved, so people will be less productive. They would not volunteer to do things. Sometimes they'll say they can't when actually they can, but it's because they don't feel valued, they feel disrespected, so it can affect their productivity.
Okay, thank you for that. So the last question, if people can just use their show of hands, do you think that this is a problem in the trust? So just using your team's show of hands, that would be really helpful, because then we can see if people think it's a problem or not. I see a few hands, yeah, more hands. So we do think it's a problem. We don't have time to then go through to the solutions because we need to go back into the main group. But thank you very much to everyone for your feedback, and I'll go and do the summary, and it will be your contributions that I'll summarize. So I'll see you in the main group shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so Linda, do you want to give some feedback from your group?
Yeah, so just some high-level feedback from the group. I think there was an acceptance from people that the videos were very impactful. They were really, really helpful. Positive feedback on the content itself, the structure of having the presenter speaking, video, and then the interview itself. Reactions, feedback, colleagues saying that they were shocked, especially when the data was then discussed around the impact that incivility has on people. Other things that were discussed by colleagues were just reflecting on how people actually leave a team rather than they're leaving an organization. So that was really useful as well. And then also a discussion around how much these this impact reverberations will then last after the incident. So someone can do something, be rude, demonstrate incivility, but actually it's got a lasting impact on those who witness it and those who experience it. We went into discussing incivility, which was really useful because we had some examples shared, personal experiences shared, but what we are able to come up with is that it makes people feel de-skilled, so they don't think they can do their work, they don't feel valued, they become less productive. People won't volunteer to do things. They will go into, I can't do this, when actually they can. There's also the notion that people become more anxious, and this is not just the staff, but also patients. And then we also had the discussion around how it can make people lose their confidence. They won't look for help, and also that in previous years, colleagues were saying, you were told about this, that so-and-so, he's known to be grumpy, avoid this one because she can be quite direct and abrupt at you. So recognizing that things have moved on significantly, and it was useful that colleagues were saying this was a while back when it happened. We then sort of had a show of hands of whether or not we think it's a problem in the trust, and a lot of the group were saying yes, it is a problem. We then didn't get enough time to look at some possible solutions or opportunities for change, and I suppose that's something that can always be taken forward.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, that's really, really good. There's quite a lot of similarity in our group. The one that I think really hit home was that the knock-on effect for the rest of the day. So if something happens to you in the morning, the knock-on effect for the rest of the day to that person, and also taking it home, and how it makes them feel at home as well. So for me, I know it often affects me for a couple of days. It doesn't stop me sleeping. I sleep really, really well, but my husband might get it and I might moan at him a little bit more than normal. So we had reflecting on the times that it's happened to ourselves. So there was quite a lot of lovely stories there that made people then change how they think about things. There was quite a lot of surprise from my group that it's still happening so much, and that lack of kindness. Sad that it still exists. But one of the things that I thought was really good in our group, we said that the acceptable behaviours need to be set at team meetings. So you know that piece of work that we all did on values and then what you can expect from our behaviours. What they were saying is that if we set the expectations of what you can expect as a team within the team meeting, for example, on your behaviours, if it then doesn't happen, you can call it out, because then you're saying to somebody else, hold on a minute, we did that session a couple of months back and that's not what I'm experiencing now, or that's not what I'm seeing. So I think there's a vehicle for it to happen within team meetings about setting the expectations of behaviours that you will experience. And there was lots around team working and the values that we set in practice as well. We talked a lot about resilience and emotional intelligence, and one of the things that a couple of the team talked about was emotional intelligence. And what I was saying is that if people don't have resilience and if people don't have emotional intelligence, then it's more likely that they will be incivil. So therefore, we might need to do work on other things first. So it's not just about saying be civil, but we might need to help people with all those other aspects first in order for them to not be incivil. Do you know what I mean? So there's a bit of a knock-on effect if you don't have those other things in your toolbox. But that's about it, really. And I thought it was a really good session. My group were lovely. They were really contributing nicely, and I can see that you'll have had a good group as well. So that calls this to an end. I'm going to call something else out that you lot are going to laugh at. I think it's sad that we don't get more doctors on these sessions. I think it's sad that we don't get certain groups of people that probably needed to have heard the video. And I think it's sad that the people that probably get how important this is are here, and the people who need to know how important it is aren't here. You get the message. I know you lot know me well enough to read between the lines. So what we might do is think about using that video, you to take it away in your teams, and you start using it as a kind of like centerpiece to then talk around it within teams. But I can see some of you smiling at me. I'm never one to hold back, am I really? I just want to say a massive thank you. Your contributions are always brilliant, and I enjoy the sessions. So I'll see. The next one was going to be on the Easter holiday, so Sharon's going to book it for the week after, so we don't get into the Easter break. Not that we can have an Easter break, but do you know what I mean? You get the sense. But a massive thank you to everybody. I know that your time's precious, and I know it's a Friday afternoon. So anyway, bye everybody. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.